Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by my friend Jonathan Williams, president of the American Legislative Exchange Council, also their chief economist. You can follow him on X at Tax Economist. Pretty hard to forget that, Tax Economist. John, I want to get to the tax cuts in a bit, but first, ALEC sent a letter to everyone about Medicaid reform. I'm glad to see that. What did you advocate for?
Well, Hugh, it's pretty common sense, as you'll find most things from ALEC, as you know well. We talked a lot about in the letter what states have done successfully to really bring reform to the program and what's needed, of course, overall to this shared program of Medicaid between the federal government and the states. And what we look to is, let's look at these things that are waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. I mean, with the numbers that we've seen over the last decade, the estimates show there's been something like $1.1 trillion in improper payments in the Medicaid system alone. And so as we look at budget reconciliation season right now in Washington and looking for ways to pay for those tax cuts and find real budget savings, but B, and probably more importantly in this sense, is actually get Medicaid back to what it was supposed to do, and that is take care of those truly in need and get away from this illusion of Obamacare and Medicaid expansion across the states that really stole from the truly needy and the disabled and those with children that cannot work and transferred Medicaid to able-bodied working age males with no kids. I mean, this is a travesty, and it's been something that is stolen from the original intent of the Medicaid program, of course, social safety net.
My observation on Medicaid, and I think I've told you before, for 17 years, I was part of a body that gave money away in concert with Medicaid providers, and it's just terrible insurance. Nobody wants it. So it's a piece of paper that providers don't take, and that's because the rates for reimbursement are so low. If they raised the rates and lowered the fraud, it might actually help poor people, John.
Well, right. Yeah, a novel concept, right, Hugh? And the other thing that you need to do is address, what happened under Obamacare was obviously the feds were promising states the so-called free lunch out there, that if you just expanded your population to able-bodied working age adults, we would give you a 100% federal match. We knew that would never last, and thankfully there's been 10 states that have not expanded under the so-called Affordable Care Act, but something that needs to be reconciled, obviously, in this era of nearly $37 trillion of national debt is how long can 90% last? I don't think it's going to be very long, and that needs to be discussed, and it is being discussed right now thanks to the leadership of Speaker Johnson here in D.C.
Did refusal to get involved with Medicaid expansion help enrich states, poorstates.org? Because I think it should. I think if people turn down Medicaid expansion, it should help them in the rich state, poorstates.org ranking. Did it?
Well, it does indirectly, but you make a good point that that's another one that we need to add to our mix is a yes or no. Have you taken that fiscally irresponsible step to expand your Medicaid coverage? Because you look at a couple of states that we've talked about, Hugh, Mississippi and Louisiana, that have made some great strides in recent years. These are two states, though, that have more than 50% of their all funds budget coming from the federal government. And they were states that, in Louisiana's case, John Bel Edwards, the Democrat there, expanded Medicaid, and that was one of the reasons why. So that absolutely factors in terms of the overall debt picture for a state.
Now, we'll look at that next year. Now, talk to me about the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017. I just talked to John Campbell about it. He didn't know that the chief economist for ALEC.org was coming up. How did you look at markup yesterday? Good, bad, indifferent?
Oh, I think it was a positive step in the right direction. Chairman Jason Smith, a great ALEC alum from his time as ALEC chair in Missouri back in the day, I think did what he needed to do and get the ball across the finish line. I mean, I think did exactly what they needed to do and extend all the important provisions. Obviously, one of the big sticking points will be the so-called SALT deduction. We've talked about that many times, Hugh. But you did the right thing. I think what you saw what Chairman Smith did is extend the lower rates, look at that small business treatment, and do things that will keep us out of a recession if these tax cuts are not renewed by the end of this year.
Faster. That's all I want to say is faster. Let's do one celebratory dance for Texas, Jonathan. Texas is going to go up next year if you add in education freedom because they passed education freedom. Bravo, Texas.
Boy, this is a big one. And isn't everything bigger in Texas, Hugh? This is $1 billion education freedom package. And kudos to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Speaker Burrows and Senator Creighton and Chairman Buckley and the whole ALEC Texas delegation. This is a big victory for nearly all 6 million public school students that will be eligible under this package. It's a game changer. Number 16, I think New Hampshire's working on number 17 for education freedom, but it's a major victory for ALEC and our Education Freedom Alliance, and more importantly, the parents and men and women across the state of Texas.
I'll tell you that this is going to really shake up the rankings next year in richstatespoorstates.org. Go and order it. Find out what Jonathan has cooked up for you this year at richstatespoorstates.org. Jonathan Williams can be followed on X at Tax Economist, president of ALEC.org. Thank you, Jonathan. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.